Yeah, so thanks everyone for being here and for your interest in this topic. Probably you're all Django developers, right? Woo. I didn't hear that. Really?
He made me a Django developer just last week.
Okay, that's quick. That's quick. Very good. Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. Like I said, or as has been said, I work at 4Digits in Arnhem. We are very passionate about a lot of things. A Wagtail CMS is our tool of choice. So here's some easy, what's it called? Advertisement for our company. We give out these Wagtail planning poker cards. So if you work at a company and you really want to do planning poker, and you don't have planning poker cards yet, you can use these ones. They're with a Wagtail logo on it and with our logo on it. So it's very nice. I can recommend it. It's for free also. So yeah, we do Python, React, larger projects. The last couple of years we've grown a bit. And we don't like things falling over. That's why we test stuff. So I have about 38 slides for you. It seems like a lot, but you know, we'll go very fast. I was assuming you don't all have Django knowledge, so I will waste some slides on telling you what Django is and how that works. And if you zone out, just count from 38 to 0. It will be easy. Okay. Why do we test? We don't like things falling over. We have a web application. We know what the user is going to do. We know what they expect to see or what they expect to be able to do. We want to test that. We don't test framework stuff because that's stupid. But we do want to test that, like if I change one thing on this form and I submit it, what happens? As the Django manual said, you can never have too much testing. At one point, your code will look like I have 100 lines of tests for 10 lines of code. That's not a problem. That's very good. So you can use WebTest, which I will introduce in this talk, as an addition to your existing tests, because you can never have enough. Our tutorial project, my tutorial project, the Django documentation has an excellent tutorial that just takes you by the hand and helps you set up your first application. It uses an example with, I believe, is it books and authors or is it something else? It's books and authors, right? Yeah. There used to be another one with maybe I thought it was polls and questions also. Anyway, very stupid things. I've created my own tutorial. I've just followed the Django tutorial and created my own models. And what we're going to do is we're going to build an application where you can predict the winner of a tournament. Like last year we had a World Soccer Championship. I don't remember what happened exactly, but I remember wanting to build a prediction system for that. So you can just predict, hey, Holland is going to win and I'm going to be rich because everyone is going to pay me money for that prediction. Everyone in the company predicted that. So this is what it looks like. I said, did I say I'm a back-end developer? So, yeah. It's very simple. It lists, this is about the World Soccer Championships for 2022, and we have 2 predictions already. Great. And there's also a form where you can do prediction. So as you can see, I can click one of the countries. It's very nicely aligned also. And then I can submit, what's the text field? Oh, that's your own name, I guess. Whatever. This is the form that we're going to test, actually. That's very hard in Django, at least it can be. So, that thing we just saw, it has a kind of backend in Django, and to anyone who knows Django, this will look very familiar. This is the Django admin. You get it for free with Django. And it tells you, yes, you can read this, right? We have 2 kinds of content types. We have predictions, and we have tournaments. And then these 2 on top you get from Django. You always have those. Ignore them. So if I go into a detail page, actually that's not a detail page yet. That's the list of predictions that were made. So here you will see which predictions I have. And in the code you will see later on why this prediction has this string representation. And here we have how you can edit in the Django admin one of those predictions. But we don't want to do it in the Django admin. We want to do it in that beautiful screen we just saw. Question break. This is just something that I learned at work, just to give people a little break and to see if everyone is on board. Okay, no questions so far? That's good. I've added some low-effort jokes as well, from /r/programmer humor, just for proper attribution. All right, testing in Django. This is what the tutorial has to say about it. First, we have a model. This is the prediction model. As you can see, it has a name, so that's the person doing the prediction. We have a tournament, so that's the World Soccer Championships 2022. And we have the winning team, like Ecuador or the Netherlands. And then the method there is the string representation, so that's a Python standard thingy, and that's the thing you just saw in that list in the Django admin. So how do we test this? Actually, there's only one thing I want to test here, and that's the string representation. So Django has this way how you can test that. It's like a Django test case. You can subclass it, give it a nice testing method. You create a prediction. Of course, you first have to create a tournament and a team. And then you can just assert that all these parts of the prediction are returned in the string representation. It's a bit stupid, but as an example for how to do testing, I thought it would be appropriate. So now we also have a view. That view you saw at the beginning, the view where you list all the predictions. That view this is how it's done in Django. It's like a generic list view, which is a very standard Django-y thing. You tie it to a template and it will render all the stuff. What's not so standard here is that we return a 404 not found if there's no prediction yet. Actually, you would want to do that differently. But I thought it would be nice to show you the difference between testing a 404 and a 200, which is more instructive for my next slide. So this is how that test would look in Django. The first one is where you test if that there's no tournament, so you would get a 404. And the second one is where there is a tournament and there is a prediction, and then you would get the contents of that prediction in the page. This is all part of the standard Django testing tutorial. It's very easy. Now we have this view to create a prediction. That's the one you just saw at the beginning, the one with the form. And now it gets a bit trickier, apart from the fact that this code is maybe a bit messy, and maybe you should do this with a Django form, but as I said, I was just following a tutorial. So the thing is, this is a little bit harder to test. If you Google for how to test a Django form submit, you always end up on this blog post by Adam Johnson, and it's actually a very good blog post. He outlines 2 ways to do it, and the first one is the so-called integration test. That's what he calls it, because it integrates the what do you call it? You test the integration of the routing, etc., with the request. And the way we do it is we fake a post. So if you look at that line, that first line in the method, you see that we submit a data dictionary to a specific endpoint with a post. Actually, that's very functional, and it's also a bit strange because you don't know that will be in the form that you saw on that page. But it does work. You can submit a post to that endpoint, and then you get a response, and then you can check that something is in that response. So that's nice. You've tested a user submitting something. You've tested a user submitting whatever, not even maybe the form, but okay. Method 2, as outlined by Adam Johnson in that blog post, is a unit test. And that's, in this case, Django. That's very much tied to Django's internal system for dealing with forms. Django has a nice class called form, and you can subclass it. And this example actually is not from my code, but from Adam Johnson's code, which is about, I think, books and stuff. But that's where you have a form, and then you do unit tests on that form class. Now, that's a lot quicker. In the previous test, I have to create a request, and it has to be processed, and then I get something back. If you do a lot of tests, then this way, the unit test, and if you have a lot of logic in your Django form, that's a lot quicker and also maybe better, because you can test everything, every aspect of that form, every validation, every error message. But it's not really a user submitting something. And it's very much tied to the internals of your framework, in this case, Django. By the way, I have not mentioned this before, but WebTest, which I will discuss now, is not really tied to Django. It also works for any other WSGI framework, like Flask. So these are my issues with these things. They're perfectly good tests, but they're not really what the user does or sees. And it could be a lot easier, for example, crafting this dictionary, which sends something to your Django application. That's a bit stupid, because you already have that information in the view. Yeah, so another question slide. So far? No, okay. So this is where we get to WebTest. What is WebTest? Everyone is right on their phones right now going to this URL. WebTest will allow you to interact with HTML as it's served by a WSGI application. And it uses only the HTML. It doesn't interact with the form class that is behind it. It just looks at the HTML. So it works on anything, basically, that a WSGI application could output. So this is how a WebTest form would look like. We subclass the WebTest from WebTest itself. And as you see, we can inspect the HTML form. We have a response, and we have a response.form. If you have multiple forms on the page, there will be a response.forms, which will have multiple entries. And you can see which fields are in the form. For example, you have a field called team. And you can check that the values of that single option that you have for team are equal to the single team that you created. If it only were so easy. But, I mean, to win the World Championship, it would be easy if there were only one team. Anyway, there's a field for the team, and you can inspect its values. It's all very Python-y. And what's even nicer, you can also submit it very easily. So in this test, I've just set which team is going to win, and I just click submit, form.submit. Of course, Django will redirect me, so I will follow that request, or that response, and then I will get to another page, which contains the results. And in that page, I can just test that we have this, that we have the name of the prediction that we added should be in the result. This is basically the core of WebTest. It's super easy. So what we actually did here was we replaced the integration test. The test that we just had, that where you had a dictionary that you filled with some random things that you hope corresponds to the form that you have, you can just replace it with django-webtest. And you know that all the required fields will be in there, or all the fields that the form has will be in there. It's a lot easier. So, some features of WebTest, or pros, in my opinion, are it has a very intuitive API. I mean, something like form.submit is very easy. It usually fails on 500 or 404 errors, unless you specify otherwise. So, are there any questions so far about that? Okay. We have some more goodies in WebTest. The assert statement can be a lot more intuitive. For example, in my previous example, I had self.assert contains blah, 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 too much commas and brackets. Instead of that, I can also have tournament name in at prediction page, which is a lot easier. And tests should be easy to read, I think. We can also use PyTest as a runner. And you can also use PyTest, the PyTest method syntax. So I used Django test case before because it is the standard tutorial thing and I wanted to stick with that. But at 4Digits we usually use PyTest test because they're easier to read. So that can also be done with WebTest. Another thing that you have is the response has a .html attribute. It gives you a beautiful soup object which you can inspect very easily. So if you want to check if something is in the page in a certain way, like there's a list with these items or that, you can very easily inspect it. There will be a link to this blog post, by the way, and all other links at the end. And I will share my slides on Mastodon. So don't type. You weren't. Good. The last one that I'm going to show is the show browser feature. So whenever you have a response that came from WebTest, you can type in this and it will show you that response in the browser, which is super easy for debugging. Nice. Okay. How are we for time?
Oh, you're still good. We got 15 more minutes.
I hoped it was less. When I was practicing this, I was done in 12 minutes. So we're already better, right?
We need to ask more questions.
Yeah, well, maybe it's also clear. Good. There are probably some more pros to WebTest, but I don't know yet what they are. I can only recommend that you try it out in your own projects, and maybe you will find it's very, it helps you. So to summarize, WebTest can replace the integration tests. It's very easy to use. I have to mention the drawbacks, because this kind of test is slower than unit testing. So probably if you have a lot of logic that you want to test, it's maybe not the best thing to do it in this manner. But if you just want to test that a form can be submitted by a user or is visible by a user, to a user even, test that something is in the page in a specific way, you can use WebTest. And if you have a really complex situation, or not really complex, but like you have a separate front end in React or something, or Vue, probably you're better off using that framework's testing methods, or even using something like Selenium or Playwright. But for your day-to-day Django form needs, WebTest really goes a long way, I think. So that's it. Slides will be on Mastodon. I would like to also thank my colleagues for listening to my practice talk. It's already added 4 minutes, so that's good, I think. And also watch our blog watch our 4Digits website for a blog post about this. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any questions? Yes.
First, I have to check something. I never pronounced it myself, but WSGI, you pronounce it as whiskey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was just asking how to, well, you can.
Yeah, sorry. Sure. Yeah, so the question is, do I pronounce WSGI as whiskey? The answer is yes, I do. I don't know if it's correct, but yeah. It's just something
It's correct now.
It's, yeah. Thank you.
And the actual question was, if you have like a JavaScript running on a page, needs to be ran before you can generate a good post. This method doesn't work.
It doesn't work, no. It doesn't work with JavaScript things. Anything else?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have any recommendations for someone just getting into this, or maybe just getting into testing in the first place, and they're kind of new to PyTest as well, and any recommendations on getting into WebTest?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would recommend for people just getting started with testing to take it from the Django tutorial, which is really great. And then WebTest is one step that's not discussed there, but it's actually very well documented. There's a Django implementation called django-webtest, which also goes into the Django specifics. So that should help. And then there's also flask-webtest, which does the same for Flask. So I think those would be great starting points. Thanks. Yes, Jan.
Yeah. Do you think it could also be used to test JSON APIs or REST APIs?
Yes, it can be, but okay, so the question was, can we use WebTest to inspect API endpoints, right? Yeah. Yes, but there would be a lot less, what you call it, a lot less advantage to it, because the great advantage of WebTest is that it can first read an HTML page and then just interact with that. So usually in an API, there's no HTML to interact with, and you're usually just putting in some JSON and expecting some JSON to go out. So for API testing, I would usually just use Django's standard tests, probably with some JSON things added in for easy inspection or something. Cool. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you a lot. Cheers, and enjoy the day.
Thank you.